Tonight, I'd like to bring you to a field hospital, just beyond the fog line of the Western Front. The year is 1944. Somewhere near the Belgian border, a man lies awake, not from pain, but from something quieter, the ache of not knowing if he matters. Around him, the smell of iodine mixes with wet wool, and the only sound is the quiet shuffle of boots on canvas. Have you ever felt unsure of your place? Not because you're confused, but because you've quietly adjusted so often. You're no longer sure where the original you went. You've held back opinions, softened your wants, stayed agreeable, useful, polite. But now, you're wondering, did all that invisibility make you safer or lonelier? You don't have to answer. Just listen and let another lifetime speak for you. This is Sleep Through Lifetimes. Each night, we let the current of time carry us while the mind drifts lightly across the surface of memory. Whether you're already comfortable or still finishing something, that's perfectly fine. No need to analyze or focus. Just let everything unfold as it is. Where and at what time are you listening from? Drop a line below. Perhaps someone far away is journeying with you right now. Before we set off, I don't need likes or subscribes. I only hope that if you drift off midway, your sleep will be calm and your heart as light as a leaf. All right, let's allow the road ahead to tell the rest. You are born in a farmhouse tucked into the quiet folds of Ohio, 1925. The days begin with the low creak of wood under bare feet, the clink of tin pails, and the smell of soil that clings even after a wash. Your mother calls you sweet boy more often than she uses your real name. Your father rarely says either. In this house, nobody speaks unless something breaks or boils over. You learn early to listen to the wind before a storm, to the way your father's belt hangs when he's had a hard day, to the way your mother's eyes flick toward the door when she wants you to disappear. At school, your name is called once for roll and never again. You aren't the brightest or the slowest. You don't get in trouble. You don't win ribbons. But you're very good at noticing who does. And you know how to fade just enough to keep yourself out of the line of fire. Your sister, 3 years older, leaves home the moment she turns 17. You admire that, but you never ask her why. There are things in this life you don't ask. Not because you don't want to know, but because you've already seen how dangerous some answers can be. By 14, you're tall and quiet and already mistaken for reliable. The neighbor's cows know your hands. The pastor nods when you help him with his crates. Nobody ever thanks you exactly, but they do expect you, as if being dependable is a destiny written in small, invisible ink. Sometimes at night, when the lantern hums and the window is cracked just enough to hear crickets, you wonder what it would be like to be known, not needed, not useful, just noticed. You wouldn't even know what to say if someone asked what you liked, not because you have no preferences, but because no one's ever asked. And yet, you're not unhappy. That's the strangest part. You feel what others might call peace, routine, safety. It's a numb sort of comfort, the kind that doesn't question itself. You rise, you labor, you sleep. If it sounds familiar, it's because maybe, just maybe, you've lived something like this before, or perhaps you're still living it now. One day, your teacher asks the class to write a paragraph titled, "Who I Want to Be." You freeze. You glance around. Others scribble cowboy, doctor, pilot, movie star. You, instead, write nothing. Not out of fear, but because the question feels too far from your daily life to be real. The truth. You don't want to be anyone. You just don't want to be forgotten. But how do you explain that without sounding foolish? You fold the paper into your notebook, unsubmitted, and the world goes on as it always has. It's funny how early some of us become invisible, how easily we learn to interpret silence as safety. In that way, childhood doesn't end when you turn 18. It ends when you stop believing someone will call your name first. A month after your 16th birthday, a distant cousin visits in a pressed uniform. He smells of starch and gasoline. The town gathers to shake his hand. He tells stories you know are half true, but you watch how the room leans in any way. You find yourself envying the way he fills space, but you say nothing. You start to walk farther, out beyond the tree line, where the creek splits into a winding stream. You listen to it, not for answers, but for rhythm. It makes sense, somehow. Water never asks where it's going. It just flows where the land allows. One night, you carve your initials into the old barn beam. Not for rebellion, not even to be remembered, just to leave a small trace that you existed here, that you mattered, that you were. The next day, a draft notice arrives. It's addressed to your full name, but it may as well be to anyone. In a way, that's the cruelest part. It's not personal. It never has been. You fold the letter neatly and tuck it under your mattress for a day before showing your parents. No one cries. No one protests. Your mother makes you soup. Your father tightens his jaw and checks the tires on the truck. There's no drama, no denial, just a smooth acceptance, like handing over your coat at the door. As you pack your things, you find that crumpled assignment still in your notebook. Who I Want to Be. You read it again, still blank. You leave it behind, and when the bus comes, you climb aboard with 30 other young men who smell like shaving cream and last night's fear. No one speaks, but you can tell they're all wondering the same thing. Not what the war will be like, but whether, when it's over, there will be enough of themselves left to come back to. The ride to the training camp feels longer than it is, not because of the distance, but because of what it carries. You stare out the window as towns pass in silence. Every brick building and telephone pole seems like a final snapshot of a life that is quietly slipping away. You don't talk to the others on the bus, not because you're unfriendly, just unsure. What would you even say? I used to be nobody special, and now I'm supposed to be a soldier. When the bus finally stops, everything begins moving faster than you expect. There's yelling, but not in anger, just in precision. You're herded into lines, handed forms, numbers, kits, orders. You're told what to wear, when to wake, how to breathe. For the first time, you feel both part of something and completely erased by it. You aren't called by your first name anymore. You're private. Sometimes just your last name, and sometimes not even that. Just a barked order or a shouted number. The first week is a blur of aching muscles and clipped commands. Your boots don't fit right. You get blisters. You don't complain. Neither does anyone else. It's a shared discomfort, like everyone silently agreed not to admit how strange this all feels. You share a bunk with a boy from Tennessee who snores so loud even the sergeants joke about it. He tells stories in his sleep, mumbled pieces of dreams. You wonder what he sees. You wonder what you'll start seeing when the noise quiets down. In the mess hall, you sit wherever there's space. No one talks about the war. They talk about home, girls, food, baseball. Some of them already miss places they used to hate. Nostalgia is funny that way. It only shows up when you're too far to touch anything real. You become excellent at following instructions. Your body learns to react before your mind catches up. You fold your clothes just so. You march with rhythm. You speak only when spoken to. The sergeant praises you once, not for bravery, not for skill, but for discipline. You're steady, he says. It's meant as a compliment. You nod. Inside, you wonder, is that all I am? Steady, like a chair or a stone. There's a moment, 2 weeks in, when one of the recruits breaks down. His hands tremble so violently during rifle practice. The instructor has to pull him aside. Later that night, you find him curled behind the latrine, crying into his sleeve. You sit next to him. You don't say anything. Just stay. He never thanks you. But the next day, he shows up on time and salutes like nothing happened. That becomes your specialty, being the one who notices, who doesn't fix or rescue, but who stands near enough to make silence feel less empty. One evening, during mail call, you receive a package. Inside is a small, knitted scarf. No note. Just the scarf, wrapped in brown paper. You know it's from your mother. It smells like her flower jar. You keep it under your pillow, even though it's against the rules. Rules are a strange thing here. Some matter immensely. Others are ignored by everyone, quietly and without mention. Like how you're not supposed to talk about nightmares, or the way some boys scream in their sleep. One night, you dream you're running through cornfields, chased by something you can't see. You wake with your hands clenched. No one notices. Or maybe they do, but they've learned not to ask. You meet a field chaplain who carries a harmonica. He plays it every Sunday, even when no one shows up to the service. You ask him once if he ever doubts what he's doing. He laughs and says, all the time. But doubt doesn't mean you're lost. It just means you're still thinking. You don't tell him, but that sticks with you. There's a wall in the barracks where someone etched the words DDONTLETTURMDCDWHOIURE. It's scratched in uneven lines, hidden behind a coat hook. You read it every morning before formation. You're not sure if it comforts you or makes you more afraid. Because the truth is, the uniform is easy. It answers things for you. Who to be, what to wear, when to move. And for someone who's never been asked what he wants. There's something oddly soothing about that. But sometimes, when you're shining your boots or folding your blanket, a thought surfaces. If no one knew your name, would you still exist? That question comes back again and again, not like thunder, but like a quiet tap. A week before deployment, the Tennessee boy gives you a drawing he made. It's crude, a pencil sketch of all your bunkmates, faces exaggerated cartoon style. Yours is in the corner, labeled The Watcher. You laugh, but it stings too. Is that all you are? The one who sees, but never speaks. The night before you leave for Europe, you sit on the edge of your bunk and stare at your boots. They've been polished so many times, they reflect your face. You hardly recognize it. You think of that essay you never wrote. You still don't know who you want to be. But now, the question feels heavier, because soon you might not have the time to find out. The ship that carries you to Europe feels like a floating warehouse. Metal bones and humming engines, packed with men who have no idea what they're sailing into. You sleep in shifts, eat too fast, and listen to boots above your bunk moving like clock hands. Time stretches and folds in on itself. You stop trying to count the days. The sea looks the same no matter where you are, gray, restless, and always slightly too big. No one talks much anymore. It's as if everyone has made a silent agreement. The less said, the easier it is to hold onto yourself. When you dock, it's raining. Of course it is. Mud seeps through your socks before you've even disembarked. You feel the difference immediately. The air is heavier here, like it's been holding in grief for centuries. You're stationed with a signal unit near a small village that barely survived the last wave of battle. Your job is to transmit coded messages from a field post, sometimes coordinates, sometimes requests for backup, sometimes things that are never spoken aloud again. You learn not to ask. The signal tent becomes your new world. A canvas shell with a humming radio and a single oil lamp. You spend your hours tuning frequencies, decoding static, and copying lines of clipped instructions in all caps. There's something oddly meditative about it, like listening to the whispers of a giant no one else can see. You become known, not by your name, but as the quiet one in comms. Sometimes they call you Radio Boy, sometimes Ghost Hands. It's meant fondly, or at least not unkindly. You smile and nod, but inside, you can't help wondering when your name stopped mattering. You think of that time in boot camp, when the chaplain said doubt didn't mean you were lost. You wonder if maybe he was talking about identity too, about how easy it is to dissolve into usefulness. One day, a new officer joins your post, a field medic named Merrill. He's sharp, dry, humored, and carries a notebook he writes in constantly. He doesn't salute like the others, doesn't bark, just moves like he knows where the bleeding's worst and goes straight to it. You end up crossing paths often. He ducks into your tent between field runs to warm his hands over your lamp. He talks in low tones, more to himself than anyone, but slowly he begins to speak to you directly. He asks your name, your real name. You pause, you say it. He repeats it back like it matters. The first time in months anyone has. It lands somewhere deep, unexpected. You don't say much. He tells you once, pulling off muddy gloves. But you've got eyes that record everything. You shrug. Doesn't mean much if it's never said. He looks at you a moment longer, then feels comfortable, then says, maybe. Or maybe you're waiting to say something when it really matters. You don't answer, but that night you stay awake, replaying those words. Maybe they're nothing. Maybe they're the first brick in something real. You start to notice things in a different way, like how the villagers in town nod to you now, when you pass, or how Merrill's hands tremble slightly after stitching up a child. You realize he's just as scared as the rest of you. He just hides it under dark jokes and scrawled notes. One afternoon, the signal wires go dead, bombing nearby. You're ordered to climb the ridge and repair the relay, alone. You do it quickly, efficiently. But when you return, there's smoke in the east and a missing transport. Merrill was on it. You spend the next 12 hours pretending to be okay. The camp is chaotic. Injured men, crackling radios, false reports. You focus on the static, on the keys, on the lines of code. You try not to picture Merrill's notebook dropped somewhere in the mud, its pages soaking up blood and rain. He returns the next day, limping, soaked alive. Barely. You say nothing at first, just nod and return to your post. But that night, you find him near the medic tent, alone, lighting a cigarette with hands that won't stop shaking. I thought you were gone. You say he exhales slow, like the breath hurts. I thought I was, too. There's a pause, then, what would you have said? If I didn't come back, the question is quiet. too quiet. You don't know what to say. Part of you wants to confess everything. That you looked for his boots in every crowd. That the silence without him felt like a scream. But instead, you just say, "You should eat something. You're pale. It's not what you mean." But it's safer. And Meryl, mercifully, doesn't press. Later, alone in your tent, you pick up the pen and begin writing something. Not a report, not a code, just a thought. But halfway through the second sentence, you crumple the page. Old habits die quietly. Somewhere beyond the hill, a flare goes up, a soft, distant pulse of light against the clouds. You watch it fade and wonder if some people are born without names, or if they just forget them slowly, over time, until all that's left is the role they played and the silence they kept. You begin to notice the way your name fades from use. It happens subtly, at first. It's just the officers calling you by rank or a buddy shortening it to an initial. But then it spreads. You become signal or radio or just A. No one's being cruel. It's just efficient. In war, names are luxuries, and you are practical. There's a clipboard by the tent entrance. Your designation is typed next to a number 243B, a number among many. You see it every morning and stop reacting to it, like a barcode printed into your skin. Your uniform bears a patch, a serial, a symbol, but not your name. That part's inside the breast pocket, scribbled once on a torn scrap from a ration box, just in case. You carry it like a superstition, like if they find your body, someone will at least try to remember who you were. Merrill calls you by name. Always. But he's the only one. It's a quiet ritual, a tiny rebellion. He walks in, tosses his satchel down, and says it with a smirk, like, "Look, I see you." Still you. You never say anything back, but he always knows when you've had a rough night. His voice softens just enough to let you land. One morning you wake before the sun. The field is quiet. You step outside the tent and breathe in the dew-soaked air. There's a moment, brief, almost fragile, where you feel yourself as a person again, not a role, not a machine pressing keys in a war you didn't choose. A bird lands on the post near the antenna, just sits there, watching. You nod at it. Lucky you. You murmur, it flies off, and the moment is gone. The static starts early that day. High interference. You spend hours fine-tuning the signal, your fingers numb. It's not glamorous work. It never was. But it's important. You know that. And sometimes that knowledge is enough. But sometimes it isn't. A supply runner, new kid, fresh face, jittery voice, comes by for a relay update. He stumbles through the door, salutes too hard, and says, "Sorry, sir. I mean, signal, private." He looks mortified. You smile gently. Name's fine. He stares a beat too long. What is it? You blink. For a second, you can't remember. It's there, of course. It must be. But it feels distant, like a book you once read and shelved too high to reach again. You mumble it. He nods, scribbles it down, and leaves. That night, Merrill finds you polishing the radio housing, like it's something sacred. He doesn't interrupt, just sits across from you, back against a crate, and says, "You know, some tribes believe names are only temporary." You raise an eyebrow. They say you get a name when you're born, but you don't earn your real one until you die, when the ancestors decide what you were actually meant to be remembered for. You nod slowly. What if they forget? Then maybe someone else remembers for them. There's a silence that follows, not awkward, not heavy, just soft. You want to tell him something then. Maybe about the barn beam with your initials, or the essay you never wrote. But again, the words coil inside you and sleep. The next morning, Merrill's off with the medics. There's a shelling alert, but it doesn't hit your quadrant. You stay in the tent, listen to the hum, transmit codes, repeat coordinates. You do it all by hand, even though your fingers ache from cold. By evening, a new directive arrives. You are to remain at post overnight. No relief, no backup, just in case the channel gets active. You nod. It's nothing new. You're the steady one, the invisible thread that keeps the web intact. The hours crawl. Outside, the fog rolls in thick. You hear boots crunch occasionally. A cough. Then silence. And then static turns to voice. A clear one, not shouting, controlled. You grab your pencil and start decoding. It's urgent. A field unit's pinned near the ridge. They need an extraction route. Now, the command is passed through you. You reroute to the captain. Updates come fast. Too fast, you write, "Relay, wait." One message gets garbled. The frequency blips. You reset it, fast. But in that 5-second blur, something might have been misheard. You double check. It seems fine. You send it through. Later, you learn a medic team went to the wrong coordinates. A minefield. 2 men injured. 1 didn't make it. Merrill was on that team. He comes back, limping again, covered in someone else's blood, but alive. He doesn't blame you. No one does. Command says it was a garble, an interference anomaly. Happens all the time. Still, you know it might have been your fingers, your pause, your assumption. And now, you can't stop hearing the sound of that static. That night, you find Merrill by the latrines, trying to light a wet cigarette. You offer yours. He accepts. His hands are bandaged. Yours shake. He doesn't speak. He just sits. You want to say you're sorry, but instead you say, "You shouldn't have gone out." Not with your leg. He smiles. Then who would have stitched the captain's ear back on crooked? You almost laugh. Almost. He stands slowly, looks at you. You think names matter, but sometimes it's what you don't say that tells me who you are. He walks away, and for the first time, you wonder if maybe He knows you better than you do. You don't see Merrill the next morning. Word spreads that he was rotated to a medical post near the Belgian line. More casualties. Fewer resources. You nod like everyone else does, like it's just part of the rotation. But inside, something slumps. You don't know why his absence makes the tent feel colder, but it does. You try to write him a note, just a short one. A joke, maybe, about the crooked ear he stitched. But the pencil hangs limp in your hand. What are you supposed to say to someone who called you by your name when no one else did? You fold the blank page and tuck it into your pocket. A week passes, then another. The nights grow harsher, not colder, just lonelier. The wind through the canvas feels like someone breathing too close. The lamps flicker more often. The codes keep coming. You bury yourself in the work, at least here, in the tent. You matter in a way no one questions. Your hands know what to do before your head catches up. There's control in the repetition, safety in anonymity. Then comes the message. A mission scrambled in partial phrases. There's danger, an opening, a need for someone to run point. Temporary command over a relay unit being deployed further up. You don't know who typed your name. Maybe it was chance. Maybe someone remembered you're steady. You're told it's voluntary. But there's no pressure. And yet, in that moment, everything slows. You think of Merrill's voice, half laughing in the lamplight, of the way he'd say your name like it deserved to be heard. You think of the boy on the transport who asked you what your name was and how you had to search for it. And for a moment, a breath, you feel like standing up, raising your hand, saying, "I'll do it." Not because you're brave, not because you're sure, but because you want to know what it feels like to be seen as someone worth stepping forward. But then someone else does. A voice behind you, another private, young, lean, wide-eyed, says, "I'll go, sir." His voice cracks slightly. You don't move. You don't protest. You nod once, automatically, like everyone else. Later that evening, you find your reflection in a dented mess tray. You stare at it for a long time, trying to decide whether you stayed silent because it was safer, or because you've forgotten how not to. The mission goes badly. Ambush, 2 men lost. One of them is the boy who spoke up. You didn't know him well, just that he liked dried cherries and whistled off. Key. You attend the service, if you can call it that. No real ceremony, just a name read off a paper, a helmet placed gently atop a crate, and a silence so thick it makes your ears ring. And then it happens. The officer calls the wrong name, just once. A slip of the tongue, quickly corrected. But you see the flinch ripple across the group. Like even now, even in death, it's possible to vanish in plain sight. You lie awake that night, wondering what it would have meant if you'd stepped forward, if you had spoken. If the officer had called your name instead of his, would it have made a difference? Or would the silence have followed you even there? You dream of the barn beam again, the initials you carved. You try to remember the shape of your own handwriting. It's smudged now, even in memory. The next day you receive a parcel. No note, just a small wrapped bundle. Inside is Merrill's notebook. There's no inscription, no signature, just a ribbon around it, tied with quiet intention. You open it slowly. Inside are sketches, crude, quick, human, faces, landscapes, fragments of thought, page after page. On the very last one, a list. People who matter, even if they don't know it. Your name is there. Not your rank, not your serial number. Your name, spelled right, underlined once. You sit with that for a long time, maybe longer than you realize. Outside, someone calls, signal. You don't answer right away, because for the first time in a long while, you're holding something that proves you existed to someone. And maybe that's what people mean when they say legacy. Not applause, not medals, just being remembered. Properly, softly, like a thread that didn't tear. You tuck the notebook into your pack and close your eyes for a moment. A quiet smile plays at your lips, and in that silence you whisper your own name, just to feel it land. The notebook becomes your anchor. You keep it tucked inside your jacket, close to your chest, where the standard issue Bible used to be. You never tell anyone, but sometimes you take it out just to touch the pages, to feel the grain of the pencil lines Merrill left behind. He had drawn you once, you notice, not your face exactly, just a figure hunched over a radio, bathed in lamplight. Below it, in tiny script, the one who listens even when no one speaks. You don't know what to do with that kind of seeing. It leaves you still. Weeks pass. The war pushes forward like a glacier, slow, unstoppable, and indifferent. Your camp shifts, then shifts again. The faces around you change. Some are promoted, some vanish, some leave in boxes. You stay. And one day, you're told you've been recommended for commendation. Not a big one, just a silver oak leaf for field excellence. Quick thinking during a high risk intercept. You barely remember the moment, just a frequency shift. You adjusted in time to reroute an entire column. It felt like any other transmission. But the captain says your steadiness saved lives. You nod politely. They hand you a form to sign, a nameplate to confirm. For a moment you hesitate, not because you're humble, though that's what everyone will assume. It's something else. A voice in your head whispers, wasn't this supposed to go to someone else? The face of that young soldier from the earlier mission flickers behind your eyes. The one who raised his hand when you didn't. You can still hear the way his boots hit the ground when he ran forward, the way the silence swallowed his name afterward. Still, you sign the form. The medal arrives in a small velvet box, shiny, clean. impossibly light for something that feels so heavy. You don't wear it. You don't display it. You wrap it in a cloth and place it beside Meryl's notebook in your pack. Somehow, the two belong together. Recognition and remembrance, each incomplete without the other. The next time the chaplain plays his harmonica, you sit closer than usual. He plays the same old tune, slow and off key, but something about it lands differently tonight, like it's meant just for you. Afterward, he asks if you'd like to say a few words. For the men who didn't return last month, you freeze. Everyone turns, surprised. You've never spoken in public. You're the one they count on to be quiet, reliable, and yet, your legs carry you forward. Your voice doesn't shake, though it feels like it should. You speak only for a minute, not about glory, not about war, just about names. You say, there are people who pass through here without noise, who do what needs doing, even when no one sees. I hope we remember them, not just what they did, but who they were. No one claps. No one needs to. That night, a few of the younger soldiers linger by your tent, asking small questions, not about tactics, but about you. Where you're from, what you did before, and you answer. You speak slowly, carefully, like someone rediscovering their own reflection. One of them says, "Didn't think you talked." You smile. Didn't think anyone was listening. In the days that follow, more people greet you by name. Some get it wrong at first, but they try, and you correct them, gently, because now it matters. Meryl sends a letter. It's short, scrawled in tired script. Heard you got a medal. Knew you would. Bet you didn't wear it. Figures. I'm still alive. Still crooked. That counts for something. P.S. I hope you finally used your voice for something besides radio static. You chuckle. Fold it carefully. Add it to the cloth bundle in your pack. Later that week, a photographer comes by the camp, documenting stories, names, faces. He asks to take yours. You agree, but only if it's outside. You stand beside the radio tent. The sun's behind you. He counts to 3. Click. You blink into the lens. You think, so this is how it feels to be seen before you vanish. That night, you take out Meryl's notebook again, turn to a blank page, and for the first time, you write not a code, not a report, just your name, and then beneath it, one sentence. I showed up when it counted, even if no one noticed. You close the book, slide it back into the pack. You sleep better that night, not because the war is over, not because everything makes sense now, but because, for once, you aren't carrying silence alone. The war ends not with a shout, but with a murmur. One morning, the sky is full of orders. The next, it's full of uncertainty. Peace arrives like fog, thick, slow, and suspicious. You keep expecting someone to say it was all a mistake, that you're still needed, still on call. But no. One by one, units are dissolved, camps emptied, men reassigned or discharged. You're handed a final packet. Documents, stamps, instructions. A ticket home. The officer at the desk slides you the medal again. This time, it has your name engraved on the back. He tells you it's yours to keep now. You nod. You don't say much. By now, the gesture of nodding feels like your native language. The train ride home is quiet. You're older, thinner. The world outside the window looks too green, too alive. You keep checking the paper in your coat pocket, just to make sure you're really heading somewhere, that this isn't a long, strange dream. You get off in the same town where you boarded the bus years ago. Only now, no one's cheering, no cousins in pressed uniforms, no crowds, just your mother, grayer, smaller somehow, standing near the post office, holding a folded coat and a tin of hard candies. She says your name once. You hug her too tightly. At home, everything is exactly the same. The same creaky floorboards. The same chipped plate at the back of the cupboard. The same silence. You sit at the dinner table while your father clears his throat and says, "You did your part, that's all." But in his language, that's affection. You place the medal in the top drawer of your childhood dresser. It clangs lightly against a rusted toy truck you forgot you once loved. You shut the drawer and don't open it again. Time moves on. You get a job at the post office. Sorting. Organizing. Delivering letters you didn't write to people you'll never meet. There's comfort in it. Clean lines, names in ink, clear destinations. Sometimes you wonder what it would have been like if you'd spoken more. If you'd raised your hand, if you'd told Meryl something real. You marry a woman named Elaine, who has a kind voice and tired eyes. She likes crossword puzzles and lemon cake. You fall into rhythm with her, safe, predictable, comfortable. But you never tell her about Meryl. You don't know how. You never write him again, even though part of you wants to. Years pass. The war becomes a paragraph in textbooks, then a footnote, then a memory no one brings up unless prompted. Your children grow. Ask questions. Did you see battle? Were you scared? You smile, shake your head, tell them you did what needed to be done. You leave the stories out, especially the ones about not speaking. Sometimes you catch yourself staring at your reflection and thinking, what was his name? The boy on the ridge, the one who raised his hand. You can't remember. You only remember the way he stood. One summer, your oldest son finds the medal in the drawer. He brings it to the dinner table like treasure. "Is this yours?" he asks. You nod. "Did you win it?" You pause. Then answer, "They gave it to me." He doesn't press. Children rarely do when the tone is final, but he polishes it gently before placing it back, as if trying to make it mean something more. That night, you dig out Meryl's notebook. It's yellowed now, fragile. You flip through until you find the sketch of the radio tent, the one where your figure sits hunched, always listening. You think I wonder what he saw in me. You think I wish I had asked. One winter, an old friend from the unit visits. He brings photos, laughs too loudly, and calls you by your rank. For a moment, you're 20 again. Then he asks, "Hey, remember that medic guy? What was his name?" You open your mouth, but it's gone. Not the face, just the name. You lie and say you think it was Mike. Or maybe Marcus. He nods. That sounds right. It doesn't. You stay up that night, staring at the ceiling, whispering every variation you can think of. None land. And for the first time in years you cry. Not from regret. Not exactly. Just from the quiet grief of forgetting the one person who remembered you. The next day, you write a letter. To no one. You don't mail it. Just write it. Fold it. Place it in the same drawer as the medal and the notebook. Inside, it says, "I never spoke when I should have. But I carried it. I still do." Years later, in a new house, a grandson will find that letter. He won't know who it's for, but he'll read it like scripture. And he'll wonder if maybe it was enough. Coming home is supposed to be an end, but it never quite feels like one. The war ended, yes, but you never really left it. It followed you, stitched invisibly between your ribs, tucked into every unfinished sentence. You take on small routines. You're good at them. You always were. The post office becomes your domain. Letters arrive and are sent. People wave to you on your daily route. "Hey there, soldier." Some still say, even years later. You smile politely, nod. They don't mean harm. They just don't know any better. Inside, the title doesn't sit well. Soldier. Hero. Brave man. You didn't charge forward. You didn't lead a battalion. You followed orders, sat with a radio, carried names that weren't yours, but you lived. And that's its own kind of burden. Elaine is kind. She senses more than she says. On nights when you lie too still in bed, she reaches out without asking. Just places a hand on your arm, not to fix, just to remind you that you're here. Your children grow quickly. You become Dad, then Sir, then the one who always knows where the flashlight is. You find comfort in that, too. Steady, present, available, but not known. You keep a shoebox in the closet. It holds the medal, the notebook, the letter you never sent. Every few years, you open it. Hold each piece like an artifact. Each time, they feel more like someone else's memories than your own. You never tell your children about Merrill, or the boy who raised his hand, or the night you almost spoke and didn't. Not out of shame, just habit. The silence has worn into your skin by now, like wind smoothing rock. One day, decades later, you walk past a parade. Flags wave, a band plays, people cheer. A teenager hands you a tiny paper poppy. "Thank you for your service," she says brightly. You smile, because that's what you're supposed to do. But something inside twists. You want to tell her, "I served, but I stayed silent." I watched others step forward. I carried a name I wasn't sure I earned. But you say, "You're welcome." Back at home, Elaine has tea waiting. She's humming something, an old tune you can't place. The light hits her hair just right, and for a moment you see her as she was when you first met. Tired eyes, strong hands, warm silence. "You okay?" she asks gently. You nod, but then, without quite meaning to, you say, "Did I ever tell you about a man named Merrill?" She pauses, sets the teacup down. "No," she says, "but I've been waiting years for you to bring him up." And just like that, something opens. You talk. Not everything, not all at once, but enough. About the field tent, the notebook, the name list, the medal that doesn't feel yours, the boy who stood up when you didn't, the name you can't remember, the silence you wore like armor. Elaine listens. No interruptions, no judgment, just presence. Afterward, she simply says, "You always thought you had to do something extraordinary to deserve being remembered. But you were there. You cared. Sometimes that's louder than you think." You don't reply, but your hand finds hers across the table and stays there. That night, you dream again of the radio tent. Only now, you're not inside. You're standing outside it, watching. And there's another version of you at the desk. Young, hunched, focused. You try to call out to him, tell him to speak up, that his voice matters, that someone will listen. But no sound comes. Instead, the younger you looks up as if he's heard anyway. And then, quietly, he nods. You wake before sunrise, go to the closet, open the shoebox. You take out the notebook, the medal, the letter. For the first time, you place them on the shelf, not hidden, not tucked away. And beside them, you add a note. These belong to a man who once didn't know who he was. But he paid attention. He remembered others. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. You sit back, exhale, and for the first time in years, your chest doesn't feel tight. Later, as the morning light warms the room, your grandson wanders in, points at the medal. "Did you win that?" You smile. "No," you say, "but I carried it." The seasons continue their soft rhythm, folding one year into the next. You settle into routines the way some settle into prayer. Mail routes become pension checks. The house grows quieter as the children drift into lives of their own, visiting during holidays, bringing laughter that echoes too briefly in the hallway. You never move away from the town. You've seen enough of the world to know you don't need more of it to feel alive. Elaine ages beside you. Her hair turns silver, then thinner, and her knees ache more often than not. But her eyes, those stay kind. The two of you grow quiet together, but not empty, like the slow, warm hush between songs on an old record. Your body begins to tire in new ways. First it's the knees, then the stairs. Then it's names, small ones at first. You find yourself pausing before speaking. like your memory needs to thumb through a drawer to find the right label. But some things remain sharp. The scent of oil and canvas when it rains, the soft click of a pencil on paper, the exact rhythm of Merrill's voice when he said, "You think names matter." But sometimes it's what you don't say. Sometimes you whisper his name aloud at night, just to keep it from fading. You're still not entirely sure if it was Merrill, but it feels right. That's enough now. Your children grow into middle age. They speak about their own careers, worries, mortgages. You listen without offering much advice. You were always better at witnessing than directing. One day, your daughter asks, "Dad, did you ever feel like you missed something? Like your life happened without you choosing any of it?" The question stuns you more than you expect. You want to say no. That would be easier. But instead, you say, "Sometimes I think I was more present in the lives of others than I ever was in my own." She doesn't quite understand, but she nods anyway. Years slip by. Elaine passes first, peacefully, in her sleep. You sit beside her hospital bed for hours, holding her hand long after the warmth has left. You whisper thank you, not for loving you, though you mean that too, but for seeing you, even when you couldn't speak. After she's gone, you move slower. The world grows brighter and louder, somehow. Neon lights, fast talkers, touch screens that don't respond well to your fingers. It doesn't upset you. It just makes you more invisible. People rush around you like you're furniture in the middle of a hallway. Sometimes you find yourself staring into space for minutes at a time, not thinking, just hovering, not quite here, not quite anywhere else. And still, you keep the shoebox. It's on a shelf now, open. The contents arranged like an altar. You've added more to it over the years. A photo of your unit, a pressed flower from Elaine's funeral, the original draft of that. "Who I Want to Be" essay, still blank but folded neatly. Visitors occasionally glance at it, but no one really asks. You like that. If they were curious enough to ask, maybe they're meant to discover it slowly, someday, on their own. One afternoon, a local historian asks to interview you for a project on veterans. You agree. She sits in your living room, all notepads and warm smiles. She asks about the war. You give her the headlines, assignment, locations, dates. You tell her about the field tent, the radio, the noise. But you stop short of the boy who died in your place, and of Merrill, and the moment you almost raised your hand but didn't, because somehow, saying it now, decades later, feels like trying to sculpt water, but you do hand her a photo. It's the one the army photographer took. Your silhouette against the tent, a radio slung over your shoulder. She smiles, you look calm, like someone who always knew what they were doing. You laugh softly. "That's the trick," you say. "Some of us just got good at staying quiet enough to seem sure." As she packs up, she asks if there's anything you want to be remembered for. You think about it. Then say, "I hope someone remembers I tried to remember others." And that's the truth. The war didn't make you a hero. You didn't leave with a speech or a statue. You lived a life, quietly, honestly, regretfully at times, lovingly more often than you thought possible. You were the man who watched, who carried, who cared, without needing to be loud about it. You were, and always had been, the steady one. When the end finally arrives, it does so with the same kind of gentleness your life settled into. No drama, no bright lights, just a slow fading out, like the hum of a radio lowering to silence. Your children, now well into their own gray-haired years, handle the arrangements. They choose a plain wooden casket, just like you would have wanted. Modest, neat, nothing ornate. Your son finds the shoebox on the shelf. He opens it slowly, one piece at a time. The medal, the notebook, the unsent letter, the folded blank essay. He sits down for a long while, holding each object like a question. He doesn't cry, not then. But later, at the funeral, he places the notebook inside your casket, tucked into the inside pocket of your jacket. "It feels right," he says, like something unfinished finding its resting place. The obituary is brief. It says your name, lists your military service, mentions your decades at the post office, your love of crossword puzzles, your wife Elaine, your children. It's respectful, clean, but it misses things. There's no mention of the names you remembered when others forgot. No line about the boy who raised his hand in your place. No paragraph about the time you spoke at the harmonica service. No sentence for Meryl. Because how do you explain that the most meaningful moments in your life were the ones where you almost said something and didn't? How do you summarize a life where presence was your greatest offering? At the service, a few veterans from the community attend. They nod at the folded flag, salute crisply, and move on. One of your grandsons, the curious one, holds the medal and stares at your name etched into it. Did he talk about the war much? He asks his father. Not really, your son replies. When he did, it was never about the fighting. It was about the people. That evening, the boy writes your name at the top of a blank journal. Just your name. Nothing else. It feels like a beginning. In the days that follow, the family clears out your belongings. They find letters never sent, recipes in your handwriting, and an old harmonica that no one remembers you playing. Everything smells faintly of old paper and patience. They keep most of it. Not because it's valuable, but because they can feel something in it, something that matters. Your granddaughter, sweet, observant, takes the folded essay and pins it to a corkboard in her college dorm. She adds a line to it in pencil. Maybe he didn't know what he wanted to be, but he became someone worth remembering. The notebook, buried with you, holds that quiet sketch of the radio tent. The one where you sit alone, illuminated only by lamplight. But in truth, you were never alone. There were always people beside you, even if only for a moment, who saw you, remembered you, and carried your name forward in small, invisible ways, like a stone thrown into a still pond. You never saw the ripple, but it moved across the surface anyway. And maybe that's enough. Maybe being remembered isn't about grand legacies, or books, or medals pinned on uniforms. Maybe it's just about having lived in such a way that when someone whispers your name years later, they do it gently, because it meant something to them. In the end, long after your name has left paper, after voices stop saying it out loud, after the last uniform fades to dust, something still lingers. Not the medals, not the formal titles, not the vague lines in local archives about honorable service. It's smaller than that. It's in the way your grandson adjusts the radio dial gently, like he's tuning into something only he can hear. In the way your great-granddaughter, who never met you, writes poetry in a quiet corner of her school library, feeling less alone without knowing why. It's in how the wind sounds when it catches a loose screen door, exactly like the creak of that field tent flap you once stepped through every morning before dawn. The notebook, now buried with you, still holds that single page, your name, and beneath it, the line you wrote so simply, "I showed up when it counted, even if no one noticed." But here's the truth no one tells you while you're alive. They do notice, eventually, in some way, in their own time. You weren't the loudest voice, but you were the one who stayed when others left. You listened. You remembered. You gave weight to things others brushed past. And over time, that kind of steadiness leaves fingerprints, the kind that don't show up on medals or plaques, but on people. There's a story your youngest grandson tells his child one night when she's scared. He doesn't call it a bedtime story, but it is. He says, "There once was a man who didn't speak much, but when he listened, people felt real." The child asks, "What was his name?" He pauses, smiles. "Doesn't matter. What matters is he was there." And just like that, you live again, not through a monument, not through fame, but through the act of witnessing, of caring, of noticing what others miss. In this way, names fade, but essence remains. You became a presence, a quiet echo that made others feel more seen. You, who once doubted if you were ever truly known, are now a part of someone else's stillness, their strength, their choice to pause before reacting, to comfort without fixing, to stay beside a silence instead of filling it. And in that, you've passed on something beyond blood, something like grace. Maybe, in another life, you'll raise your hand. Maybe you already have. In someone else's heartbeat, the boy who once carved his initials into a barn beam and left behind a blank essay. He became a man whose silence taught others how to listen. You might not remember any of this tomorrow, but the dream will go on. And now, all that's left is stillness, the kind that settles in after a long walk, or after the last page of a letter you didn't know you needed to read. Feel the weight of your breath soften. Let your shoulders drop a little lower. Let whatever names you carry, the ones others gave you, or the ones you gave yourself, rest, just for now. You don't have to know who you are tonight. You don't have to be anyone. You were here. You noticed. You stayed. And that's more than enough. Let the quiet stretch around you like a wool coat, familiar, worn in. Let the old tent walls fold gently around your dreams. Maybe, as you drift, you'll see him again. The boy in the corner of the photo. The man with the pencil in his hand. The soldier who never spoke first, but who never looked away. Maybe you'll sit beside him this time. Say what you needed to say. Or maybe you'll just be there. And that'll be enough. So breathe deeper now, slower. You might not remember any of this tomorrow, but the dream will go on.